Okay, my discourse today would basically be on the power of critical thought. I would give example of the Jewish race. The Jews have demonstrated just what having and implementing critical thinking, how far it can just manage to bring not just a people but also a nation. Ladies and gentlemen, you will realize that one of the peoples of the world, in fact, if there are people who have gone through what I would describe as generational pogroms, very few, if at all, have faced what the Jews have. Yeah, right from what happened in the Russian Empire in the years 1881 to 1884, yeah, what was called the Elizabethan violence, all the way to the Nazi Holocaust that was committed by the Nazi regime in Germany, and interestingly, legally, because of the the crafting of the Nuremberg laws of 1935, which amongst others created what is known as the Reich Citizenship Law, and subsequently the law for the protection of German blood and honor. Essentially, you find that these were laws that were specifically crafted to lend legal credence to the extermination of the Jewish race. Of course, all this boiled, and the pinnacle was in what is known as the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camps, which are gas chambers where at least 6,000 people were killed a day, with total fatalities approximated at about 1 million by the time the Soviets liberated Auschwitz on the 27th of January 1945. Yeah? Really, that is some very grim background in terms of what these people have gone through. Yeah? But my point is that the Jews have presented a case study of critical thinkers who have managed to rise from the ashes and to dominate the world in terms of the thinking, in terms of science, in terms of the economy. The domination is such that it's worth presenting the same as a case study that ought to be replicated even by other nations, and even us as Kenya. Yeah? It would be important just to mention a few Jewish theories who have really lit the globe in terms of their critical thinking. Here I have in mind the likes of Albert Einstein. Now, Einstein is the guy that came with the idea of the theory of relativity. And if you're a keen reader of his theories, he had one interesting quote that imagination is better than knowledge. I agree entirely with him to that extent. Why? Because it is only through imagination, through engaging your critical thought, that you shall come up with ideas. And then these ideas, upon being implemented, will of course craft a change in the lives of the people. Of course, the other Jew that I also have in mind here is Jonas Salk. Now, this was the guy who created the first, or discovered the first polio vaccine. We have the likes of Edward Teller, described as the father of the hydrogen bomb. For the current generation, we are aware of the likes of Sergey Brin and Larry Page, the co-founders of Google. Yeah? Of course, you can also not forget the Rothschild family, the greatest bankers of the 19th century, and who are even said to control the Federal Reserve Bank of America and therefore the world economy. Yeah? Why is this story so fascinating? It's because we realize that the Jews have dominated the world, both in terms of theory and practice when it comes to wealth creation. Yeah? When you look at the theories in terms of wealth creation, the economists, yeah, we've had leading thinkers from the Jewish race, the likes of David Ricardo, the likes of Karl Marx, the likes of Karl Marx, the likes of Gary Baker, the likes of Milton Friedman, Simon Kuznets, Joseph Stiglitz, yeah, and history is replete with facts that have demonstrated that the Jews have in one way or another been at the center of both the world trade, commerce, and even the financial sector, be it in Europe, the Americas, and of course now even in Africa. Yeah. Of course, I will also not forget one key player in this interview, that is the Jewish Vladimir Lenin, who sought to implement the Karl Marx theory, the Marxian doctrines. He sought to put the experiment practical through the formation of the Bolshevik government in Russia. Yeah? So that, in a sense, what I want us to think about in respect of this discourse is the way the Jewish people have succeeded in not just creating thinkers, and I've shown they have quite a number of thinkers, but also in ensuring that, this thinking have been put into practice through implementation, which has resulted in the Jewish race being at the forefront when it comes to wealth creation, and is dominated, like I have stated, is demonstrated through their domination of the world economic and financial sector. Yeah, in a sense, I'm talking about the fusion of theory and practice. Yeah, I want us to seriously interrogate this nexus and fusion. Yeah, because I honestly believe that is where we are not getting it right. We have not got it right, even as a country, right? Of course, we have a series of theories, some manifested even through our manifestos of our political parties, but then the question is, are the same implemented so that they are transformed into wealth creation that can be felt by the people? Where is the disconnect? Why are we not getting this thing right? Is it that we have simply failed in terms of being idea creators? Are we simply failed to be, imaginative and innovative in terms of how we implement our economic policies and the attendant laws and acts of parliaments that are meant to enforce these policies? Is that where the problem is? Yeah. Let me start by stating my general principle that one of the best business partners to have is the government. And you see, this best explains the reason as to why in developed nations, governments always take initiative to cushion the businesses of their people. They cushion the people and also their businesses in the event of recessions, as is happening currently in the West. Look at what is happening in the United States, in Germany, in Italy. You see a deliberate, proactive initiative by governments to ensure that they cushion their businesses in the course of this particular crisis. Yeah. And why is this key? This is key because when governments do business with their people, yeah, when governments when they spend through payments, then this has got a way of creating wealth through the multiplier effect. It's one of the ways through which money gets to flow in the economy. Yeah? Now, this is one theory that was best represented by an economist that I admired so much, someone by the name John Maynard Keynes. Now, Keynes, the summary of Keynes' theory was that, at a time of recession, at a time when things are not moving, yeah, then for there to be recovery from a complete collapse, then what happens? The government comes in as a spender of the last resort, yeah. Now, I think this is really key, yeah, and I think it's one of the theories that I would recommend that our governments, both at the national and at the county level, really embrace, yeah, and especially when it comes to how they deal with their local businesses, yeah, the persons that trade with them, yeah, and to end what has become the normal cycle of unending payments, cycle of unending payments and pending bills, which in most instances ends up crippling these businesses, yeah. And most of them are indebted with loans, name it, yeah. And I think the government really needs to apply the Keynesian mode for an economy such as ours. All of you will appreciate that in Kenya now for like the last 3 years we've been more or less in a recession mode, yeah, everywhere across the board. I mean, nationally, even at the county level, people will tell you there is no money, there was no money, no circulation of money. And of course now the corona pandemic has made it even worse, yeah. I dare say that at times such as this, the role of government, be it the national government or the county government as a spender of last resort, is key, yeah. Now, my point is, are there scenarios where that mode has been put into practice, the Keynesian mode of thought? Now, you will recall, or rather for those who are good students of history, that in as much as we have a depression now, the world has had depressions even previously. In fact, in 1929, we had an even more serious one called the Great Depression of 1929, which lasted for around 10 years and affected the whole world. Yeah? And the question that I would ask, and which I keenly try to answer, was how did the United States government then, under the President J.D. Roosevelt, solve this problem? Of course, it's important to realize, and that is key, that Roosevelt is one of those leaders that had, had that rare distinction of having served 3 terms as the President of the United States of America. Yeah. And what did this gentleman do? This gentleman crafted what was known as the New Deal. Yeah. Under the New Deal, he came up with a series of legislation whose core object was to ensure that money is in the hands of the people. Yeah, he had a series of legislation, the like of the Resettlement Act. The Resettlement Act, in summary, is one through which the government ended up buying around 10 million acres of lands that were ignored, not arable, and of no much economic value. Then the people were paid to, do conservation measures to convert the lands into parks, into, agricultural, productive, settlement lands, so that in the end of the day, the farmers' standards of living were improved. The lands were also improved. They became more productive. Of course, there was more production, and the end game was a robust economy because of this particular act. Yeah, Roosevelt also came in with such acts as the Emergency Relief Appropriation Act. Yeah, and this was basically involved the funding of people to engage in acts, like rather in enterprises like construction industry, building. There were major infrastructural projects which ensured that money was in the hands of the people, so that in the end of the day, through deliberate government intervention, money found its way in the hands of the American people, therefore, curtailing this massive recession cycle. Yeah? Of course, there was also the aspect of the Second World War, in which the American government engaged in, especially, in support of Britain, which called for, major recruitment of, there were major drafts where so many Americans were drafted into the army, they sort of weapons, and, that nature of expenditure, it is said, added about 64 billion American dollars to the debt. And what was the end game? The end game was that the American economy grew by about 17.7%. What am I saying? I'm saying that our governments, both at the national and county level, can learn from this very basic example. How you can use expenditure to, as it were, curtail recession in your economy. Yeah? Spending to pay for services done. Spending to pay for capital projects, yeah, must be seen as an economic stimulant. It's a way that, would help us in dealing with the current cycle of recession that we have. Right? And in fact, it's important to note that not dealing with the recession can itself have catastrophic effects. Yeah? We saw what happened in Germany at that time. I remember the rise of Hitler in Germany in 1933 was basically because of the serious recession. The Germans said enough is enough. They could go for, they easily fell for the trap of the Nazi. So that's how serious it is. So the government must come in to spend to ensure that their people come out of this cycle of recession. Yeah. And of course, in our end, I honestly believe that we do not need to have a new series of laws. We have enough legislation in place. Yeah? All that we need is perhaps, a more robust and proactive interpretation of the legislation that we have, with a deliberate intention, with a deliberate aim to promote expenditure so that we can end this recession cycle. Yeah, the Public Finance Management Act is clear cut. Yeah, let us now interpret it in a way that promotes business and therefore boosts the local economy. Let us not give it an interpretation that in the end of the day foments recession and the closure of businesses. Yeah, what I'm saying is that if we end recession through government spending, yeah, then this definitely will have the multiplier effect in terms of output, consumption, investment, expenditure, and in fact, even net exports. It is possible, yeah? In fact, in line with what President Roosevelt did, yeah, I think there are certain other basic initiatives that we could also do. I mean, if I leave aside the aspect of payments to the persons that have done businesses with the government, yeah, in a place like Kisumu, one of the major resources that we have is the lake. Yeah, for a long time we talked about the fishing industry. Yeah, but now we talk of imports of fish from China, such that I would think that perhaps even as a government, would it be possible for us to basically organize our fishing industry as it stands now? Would it be possible that we organize our fish farmers through well-regulated circles, societies, yeah, so that we organize the production of fish? Is it therefore possible that using the arm of the government that we even assist in terms of securing market for these farmers? Is it possible that the circles that we have would then be assisted so that we have value addition, maybe through the creation of fish processing plants, which after securing markets would then imply that these farmers would gain in terms of better prices from economies of large-scale production? Is it possible that we can replicate the same, philosophy in other crops and even plants in our areas? Maybe like when it comes to mangoes, when it comes to guava. Yeah? Is it possible that the same can be replicated even in our Juakali industry? Yeah? Can we organize our people in specific areas, yeah, in such a way that they can then gain from economies of large-scale production, and we gear that production towards markets which would then have been deliberately established by our governments? Ladies and gentlemen, those are a few questions for thought that I have presented. But one thing that we'll have to agree is that critical thinking through innovation is one of the ways that our governments must, and in fact have to put in place, yeah, so that we can find innovative solutions to the numerous problems that our people are facing, be it economically, be it socially, and even politically.